Alrighty, folks, what's going on? This is Matt here for Dark One Linux Tech and Gaming. This is the fusion of Linux technology and gaming, and we are looking at something I haven't done in a bit. Steam Deck review from a casual user. Now, I always find these reviews more interesting because they're not for the tech savvy, like their overall approach. More very just I want to plop, sit down, play a game, press start, that kind of stuff. Very ironically Nintendo Switchy and their kind of way of doing stuff. So I'm curious to see what his take is or their take is, and we'll go from there. So let's roll into it and see what their opinion is from a casual gamer's point of view on the Steam Deck.
The Steam Deck is one of the best handheld gaming devices out there, but for casual gamers, it could also be the most frustrating. As a busy parent who never knows where the next chance to sit down with a game will come from, I decided to pick one up and see what all the fuss was about. The Steam Deck may look like a regular gaming console, but underneath the hood, it's more like a handheld PC. It runs a Linux operating system, and on top of that, Steam have built their own OS, which allows you to access the Steam store, as well as a whole host of other gaming services. That doesn't mean you can run everything out of the box. You will have to dig into Steam's desktop mode to get things like PlayStation Remote Play or Xbox Cloud Gaming set up. But if you ever just want to sit on the couch and play some games from your Steam library, or maybe tap into an emulator here and there, then the Steam Deck is a really appealing option. If you are coming from the Switch, you'll notice this is a pretty bulky handheld, mainly because of those two grips on the back of the device, but they also make the Steam Deck a lot more comfortable to use, even though it is a little bit bigger and heavier.
So this is something that I constantly hear about, is the ergonomics of the deck. I'm not going to yank out of the dock right now, but the Switch, this thing and these things would attach to the Switch. I've got to be the most fucking uncomfortable portable console because there's no like tactile back to it when you're in handheld mode. Whereas at least with the deck, you have those grips, which make this like the normal controller station port that you get with the Switch kind of makes you wish they kind of put that in some way, shape, or form in with the actual Switch, but they didn't. So the deck, for me personally, has much better like ergonomics and just like hand positioning overall, like where your hands naturally sit and stuff, than the Switch ever will. Other than that, I did really not much else to say so far.
Heavier. If you watched my setup video, you'll know that I put a D-brand skin on mine to help a little bit with grip and just protect the device in general. I found it pretty difficult to apply the skin in certain areas, and maybe getting white was a mistake because I can already see some discoloration. Part of me wonders if I was a bit over the top with my hairdryer when I was trying to straighten out the edges, but I have noticed that this is a little bit more pronounced around the Steam Deck's air vents. And one thing you need to know about the Steam Deck is that it is going to run pretty hot, especially if you're playing a more demanding title. But to deal with that heat, the fans are going to run pretty loud too. So if you're
as far as fan noise is relative. I've personally, for me, I wouldn't have put it much higher than probably like a PS4, which, if you're noise sensitive, the deck isn't going to be for you, and that's totally fine. One thing he did mention earlier that I forgot to mention about is about, oh, you're not going to be able to play all your games. And it's like, yeah, but that's so dependent on the hardware when it relates to PC gaming. See, this is the thing that, like, it's a weird device for people that kind of, depending on where you're coming from, to understand. If you're taking the mind of a PC person or a PC gamer, regardless of your OS of choice, spec and everything else is the thing that you care about. That's all that ever matters to the PC master race, basically, determine the experience, etc. But everything works, blah, blah, blah. But the deck doesn't do that because it's fixed hardware. Like you can upgrade the NVMe and kind of the controllers and go with like hall grips, hall sticks and all the other stuff. But like the actual hardware, what you see is what you get. for the internals. And that's not something a lot of PC gamers are used to. So when they can't play certain things because, you know, the deck as like from a hardware perspective is limited, you're going to find that if you had bought a $400 computer, period, end of story, there's going to be the hardware limitations. Not now you can talk about the hardware limitations with the OS limitations. That's another argument to go into. But most people, let's say most people, and most even consoles, don't have 10,000 plus games that are for said device either. So, you know, pick your battles, I guess. To me, the deck is a console, and it's a console-like experience. That's what it's going for. It gives you some of the perks of the tinkering and all the other stuff that you can do, whereas these things are very locked down. They void your warranty, blah, 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 all that stuff. The deck doesn't do that. You own the hardware. Valve doesn't give two shits what you do with it. But the shipping experience, what you get, is very much in the mind frame of a console. The extras are in the open nature of the device. That's the PC portion. You want to install Windows? Go ahead. You want to install Linux? Go ahead. You want to try Mac OS? Go ahead. You want to try BSD? Go ahead. You want to run fucking Haiku OS on it and attempt that? Go right the fuck ahead. So that limitation and the deck is really, to me, has always been like a really hard device to define in and of itself, because it depends on how you actually, like, your perspective of coming into it. Because, oh yeah, it can do PC stuff, but it, like, the shipping experience that you get from Valve, the one that you boot into by default, is kind of, it's very much a console experience. So, relative.
If your plan was to play this in bed, you better hope that your partner has a good pair of noise cancelling headphones. And in fact, even I had to use them most of the time when I was playing certain games like Planet of Lana to truly appreciate the brilliant soundtrack on that game. It can be a real joy to experience those gaming moments from anywhere around your house, sitting on the couch while somebody else is using the TV, or tucked up in bed, leaning into a more personal experience that I feel handheld gaming can afford you. However, it's not quite as portable as you might think. When you pack it into a protective case, it actually becomes a really sizable bulk that is too big for most backpacks, and the battery can drain incredibly quickly if you are playing a demanding title. So
1 second, please. So, to give a frame of reference, this is literally no bigger than a normal school backpack. In here, I have let's see, got the Steam Deck, which is in there. I also have a 16-inch laptop that is in here, a 3070 Aero that is in here, with the brick charger, and the other charger, and the PlayStation 4 controller, and the wires, and some other ancillary stuff like battery packs and stuff. If you're gonna, it doesn't take up that, like, I don't know what y'all carry for size of backpacks anymore, but, like, damn, I don't know how many of y'all, like, I remember going to school and we used to cram, 8 different subjects with books that weigh 30 pounds. By the end of the year, your bag looked like a sagging nutsack of, like, overusedness. It's like, it was bad. So, I don't know. Like, to me, the deck isn't that much bigger. If I can cram a full bore gaming laptop with the power brick and everything else, I can deal with the deck. Like, if you're talking it's an awkward shape for most backpacks, yeah, I'll give you that. But as far as, like, the overall, like, weight and stuff, it's relative to kind of, I guess, what you're used to. But to me, like, it doesn't really take up any more space. It's more condensed, and, like, so it's a thicker and different kind of space that it takes up in a bag. But how it takes it up and the amount that it's going to take up volume wise in the bag is condensed. That's the biggest thing. It's not, a lot of bags aren't developed around kind of the deck. I know JSOC has a like a messenger bag specifically for the deck and stuff. They might have one for the ROG Ally though. Uh, I won't get into why I'm not a fan of the ROG Ally. Anyway, it's real. I kind of disagree with that point, but like I can understand what he's saying. Um, as far as like the bulk when it's in the case and how it's not going to fit in most bags. I wouldn't call it heavy. I just say the way that it's built, like condensed nature of the device overall, and the way most backpacks and laptop bags and all that stuff are made, don't exactly conducive it to a portable device very well for some people. But again, that's I'm of a different era where, you know, we had to cram 50 to 100 pounds of shit in a school backpack. So I'm different, I guess.
So you will need to stay close to a power outlet or take a power brick with you in order to get the most out of it on the go.
As far as battery life, again, it's depending on you determine that experience. See, this is the part that a lot of people aren't used to. So, like, if you want better battery life, you get the perk of some of the things that you can do. FSR, you can get some of the things of like dropping down to 40 frames per second as opposed to running at 60. Now, these are more technical, and I use that term very loosely, oriented stuff that most casual gamers aren't going to give two shits about to do. They're just going to want to click play and go into the experience, and that's what they have. And I totally get that perspective. But also, the discount that you have the very easily available option to go that route. But if you are just in the mind frame of default experience, I can totally understand what he's saying about the battery life. Honestly, the battery life that I've gotten generically, just if you're talking straight playing, is about 2.5 to 3.5 hours, give or take, depending on the exact game you're playing. And to me, that's about an hour short of the original Switch, which that is. So, you know, whatever. It's, again, it's relative to the user and how you approach it. Like the device, the deck is a quagmire device that doesn't really meet one specification or the other. It's all about angle of approach and for the user.
That said, one of the times that I did take the Steam Deck with me, I actually got stuck on a train for 5 hours between London and Liverpool, and I was able to go really deep into Baldur's Gate 3, and in those moments you just realise that the magic of the Steam Deck, being able to take such a wide range of systems with you on the go, is worth it for all of its rough edges. After a week or two of fiddling with the settings and getting things set up exactly how I wanted them to be, I was finally making progress with some really amazing titles that I didn't expect to have a chance to play otherwise. Maybe I was getting a bit carried away though, because at least on Baldur's Gate 3, this is when the crashes start to happen. Because unfortunately when you get about 20 hours into that particular game, the environments are going to get a bit busier, a little bit more demanding on the system, and you're going to start to experience a lot of crashes. Those crashes really can be crippling, especially when you haven't saved your game at a key moment, and sometimes launching these games can take an absolute age, so getting back into the title can be a real drag. Around the time...
So just out of curiosity, so Baldur's Gate, and I have this on Gen 4 NVMe on that 3070, and the load times even on that are not what I would call fucking stellar. So my question is, it relates to the deck though. Are you using the internal, or are you using the SSD? Are you using the SSD, or are you using the SD card? Because while generically most games are able to not really care, Baldur's Gate is very specific on you need SSD. So I'm not criticizing, because I'll criticize. I love Baldur's Gate. I've beaten it twice. I've full playthroughs. But on the same note, I will also criticize that game has some serious issues on its own. Honestly, it's probably a game in the, like, RPG of the year for me. But I'm also not unaware that it is not the masterpiece that everyone gives it credit for because of those technical issues. And I've had more than my fair share of crashes on not just the deck, but also Windows. This very system, I'm using this to record on Linux, and that's on a range of hardware. That's from the AMD, integrated GPU. I have a AMD Radeon CC600 that I played on. I have the 3070 laptop. They've all experienced crashes. It's annoying. It's a pain in the ass, and I totally get the frustration with that. But again, I'm always talking in this specific case because I can speak from experience with this, that it's the game. I've played it across 3 different devices and 2 different platforms. Well, 3 different platforms technically because I run Garuda, so and then Windows and then the Steam Deck. So I'm gonna say in this particular case, it's the game. However, things getting bogged down, yes, definitely on the system because the system.
The time that I started noticing these real performance issues was the time that Pokemon dropped their new DLC for Scarlet and Violet. Clearly, if I'm interested in those games, then I don't care too much about performance because they've been pretty terrible as well. But it is a game that I enjoy playing, especially because I like playing online on the ranked ladder. And so I dove into the DLC to pick up the new Pokemon that had been released. Going back to the Switch after a period of playing the Steam Deck, it really does feel like a toy, and it's definitely not as impressive as a device, but that catalogue of Nintendo classics gives it a real enduring appeal because Nintendo does focus so much on that classic catalogue of Nintendo games. The Steam Deck actually has very little crossover with it, and in fact, the only real area where they do crossover is in the indie titles that you'll find on the Steam store. So I actually found myself playing the Steam Deck one night and the Switch the next. Realised that although I had gotten really into Baldur's Gate 3, maybe I should look a bit deeper into the Steam store and find some titles that maybe are better suited to a handheld gaming experience. Just in that moment, Steam released a brand new update for the Steam Deck, and there was also one that came through for Baldur's Gate 3 that actually made it a lot more playable, and now I can fully make progress through Act 2 of the game without as many horrible crashes that I was experiencing earlier. This is another really cool thing about how Valve are approaching the Steam Deck. You get the impression that they see Steam OS as a really important aspect of their future, and so they're constantly trying to update it and listen to community feedback to include features that have been requested from the crowd. In truth, if you're looking for a completely stress-free experience, then you should probably just pick up a Nintendo Switch. If you're not as bothered about all those Nintendo style games and you want to have something that's a bit more adult, a bit more niche, then the Steam Deck is a brilliant option. For more, check out this video. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in a bit.
So overall, like I get the approach and I understand. Would I recommend a deck over a Switch? It depends on your preference for gaming. If Nintendo's first party stuff is more your flavor, Pokemon, etc., then the closest thing you're gonna find on the deck anyway, like close to 101 equivalent, is probably like Digimon or any of the Digimon games. But like as far as like if you are in that Nintendo sphere of stuff, you're not gonna find it on the deck. Like if that's your jam, that's fine. The deck to me is a equivalently power wise. I equate it to a portable PS4. That's the best way to look at it. Because if you look at the PS4, it generically did 1080, but now it was realistically like 900p. So, and you're lucky if despite Sony's marketing and everything else, you might get 900p somewhere between 30 and 60, depending on the game, the style of game, and all the other stuff. So it really did depend. And the deck is just much more open about that. But the thing that I do agree with is that Valve is taking this is, a very Amazon approach. And I don't mean that in the negative way that most people would connotate that to. What I mean is that the deck in and of itself, while a portal into Steam and Valve, and obviously they're selling you stuff. That's the whole point. But they leave it open Whereas like Amazon locks down like its Fire devices and all that stuff without, you know, some type of legit hardware hack that you have to do on certain ones, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm speaking to someone like I haven't gotten a new Amazon Fire tablet since I think it's the 8.9 HDX, like the last model of that, like 2014, 15, something like that. So it's been a while, but the point remains like Valve is taking an opposite approach and they're taking an open approach to it. They don't give a shit what you do with the hardware once you buy it. That's the whole point. Like, would they prefer you to just use the default experience and all that stuff? Yeah, sure. But they also aren't impeding users. So while this is where Valve has the different understanding that a lot of people and a lot of companies don't. Most consumers are going to buy and just go with the default experience that you ship. That's just most people. But what these companies do is they put impediments in the way for people who don't do that. Whereas Valve is just like, here's the default shipping experience. Do what you want. And it's such a mind fuck that people aren't used to that because we're used to these, you know, lockdown natures of these devices that the OEMs and everybody else dictate the life cycle. They dictate everything. And now for the first time in a long time, the consumer can dictate a lot of that experience. How long do you want to support the device? Well, that's up to the consumer. You know, it's a very different time for electronics right now, especially because of companies like Valve or Fairphone or all these other companies that are like, not so much this right to repair, but just consumer friendly in that regard, where it's like this whole throwaway culture of that we have for tech is starting to get pushed back on because people are like, hey, screw you. Hey, John Deere, I want to fix my own goddamn tractor kind of stuff. And I think that the deck is a kind of one of the forerunners to that for the mass market. So I'm glad to see it. And, you know, I'm not against lockdown devices and experiences and that stuff, but I'm also not against companies being more open with their devices. So overall, I have no complaints about his review of the deck from a casual perspective. It definitely has its rough edges, not as nearly as bad as they used to be. But overall, I think the default shipping experience for the deck, for most casual users, if you are not tied to a first party of any, you know, Nintendo or PlayStation or Xbox or whatever, if you're not tied to those brands' first party exclusives and first party titles, the deck is a pretty compelling offer. And at $320, if you can get a refurb, is a pretty good deal considering, you know, $550 if you want the high end, $350. Just saying. So it's all relative. It's all depending on what you want for your experience. But I got no problem with the casual's perspective on the deck, because for him, it might not be the refined experience that most people want, or, you know, the exclusive titles that others provide. So go where your games are, bruh. But overall, good review. I always enjoy the different perspectives. But what's your guys' take? You guys know what to do. Comment, rate, subscribe, any Patreon. All that crap is down below. And I will catch you guys on the next piece.